Admiral Taiwan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Pride, and watched the stars through the wide viewing window. Around him, hundreds of ships moved into battle formation. Half of them were human. The other half belonged to their allies, the Vel Confederacy. For 50 years, humans and Vel had been friends. They had signed treaties. They had shared technology. They had fought side by side against common enemies. Taiwan had spent his entire military career believing that this alliance was the greatest achievement of human civilization. Today, they would fight together against the Keth swarm. The Keth were monsters. They were a hive mind that consumed everything in their path. They had no desire for peace or trade. They only wanted to spread and feed. Both humans and Vel had lost colonies to the Keth, and now they had gathered their combined strength to end the threat forever. Captain Una Park walked up beside the Admiral. She was younger than him, but her eyes held the sharpness of someone who had seen too many battles. She commanded the battleship Iron Will, but today she was aboard the flagship for the final planning session. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I need to speak with you alone." Taiwan looked at her face and saw worry there. He nodded and led her to a private room behind the bridge. "What is it, Captain?" Una hesitated. "Sir, something feels wrong. The Vel have been acting strange for months. They asked for copies of our ship designs. They wanted detailed maps of Earth's defense systems. They repositioned 3 of their fleets last week without telling us." Taiwan sighed. "Una, we have been allies for 50 years. They probably have their reasons. We are about to fight the biggest battle in our history. Now is not the time for suspicion. Sir, I have learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts are screaming at me." The Admiral put his hand on her shoulder. "I understand, but we have committed 70% of our military to this battle. We cannot turn back now because of a feeling. After we destroy the Keth, we can investigate your concerns." Una nodded slowly. She did not look convinced, but she was a soldier. She would follow orders. They returned to the bridge as the fleet entered the Obsidian Nebula. The Keth were waiting for them. Thousands of bioships filled the space ahead, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly light. They were ugly things, grown rather than built, and they moved like swarms of insects. "All ships engaged," Taiwan commanded. The battle began. Human and Vel ships charged forward together. Weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. Dr. Hannah Kim is the brilliant scientist who had developed humanity's newest weapon. Watched from her station as the resonance pulse activated. The weapon sent invisible waves through space that shattered Keth bioships like glass. Dozens of enemy vessels broke apart in seconds. Lieutenant Jun Lee flew his fighter through the chaos. He was 24 years old, and this was his first major battle. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was pounding. All around him, ships were dying. Explosions bloomed like flowers in the void. "This is amazing," he whispered to himself. "We are actually winning." He was right. The combined fleet was pushing the Keth back. Victory seemed certain. Then everything changed. The first shot came from a Vel cruiser. It struck a human destroyer without warning. Jun Lee saw the explosion and thought it must be an accident. A terrible mistake. But then more shots came. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The Vel fleet turned their weapons on their human allies. "What is happening?" Jun Lee screamed into his radio. "The Vel are firing on us." On the bridge of Soul's Pride, Admiral Taiwan stood frozen in shock. All around him, alarms were screaming. His crew was shouting reports of attacks from their own allies. "Sir, the Iron Will is taking heavy fire. The carrier group is gone. All ships destroyed. The Keth are pressing the attack. They are coordinating with the Vel." Taiwan felt his world collapse. 50 years of alliance. 50 years of trust. All of it was a lie. Captain Una Park's voice came through the radio, broken with static. "Admiral, I told you. We need to retreat. We need to save what we can." But it was too late. The Vel had planned this perfectly. They had waited until the human fleet was fully engaged with the Keth. They had positioned their ships for maximum damage. And now they were killing everyone. The Soul's pride shuddered as enemy fire struck its hull. Taewon grabbed the command console to keep from falling. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered. His voice was calm, but inside he was screaming, "Get to the escape pods. Now." Junli watched the flagship break apart. He saw escape pods launching into space, tiny lifeboats fleeing a dying giant. He wanted to help, but enemy fighters were everywhere. He could barely keep himself alive. In 1 hour, humanity lost 60% of their fleet. The survivors ran. They scattered into the darkness of space, fleeing toward any safe haven they could find. Behind them, the Vel and the Keth did not pursue. They had already won, as Junli's damaged fighter limped toward the emergency meeting point. His radio crackled with a broadcast. The voice belonged to High Arbiter Kolos, the leader of the Vel Confederacy. "Humans of Earth," the alien said, "your alliance with us was never real. You were tools, nothing more. We used you to weaken the Keth, and now we will take everything you have built. Your colonies, your ships, your planet. You have 1 solar cycle to surrender. If you do not, we will destroy you completely." The broadcast ended. Junli sat in his cockpit, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he had believed in. His squadron was gone. His friends were dead. The alliance that had protected humanity for 50 years had been a trap all along. He thought about his family on Nova Prime. He thought about his mother and father, his little sister. Were they safe? Or had the Vel already reached them? Tears floated in the zero gravity of his cockpit, but his hands were steady. "We will remember this," he whispered to the empty stars. "We will remember everything." Somewhere in the darkness, Admiral Taewon was thinking the same thing. 3 months had passed since the betrayal. The galaxy had changed. Humanity was bleeding. The Vel Confederacy moved fast after their surprise attack. They swept through human space like a plague, taking colony after colony. 8 of humanity's 12 star systems fell in the first 2 months. Millions of people became refugees, fleeing toward Earth on any ship that could fly. General Daesu stood on the command deck of Ganymede Station. Watching another wave of Vel assault ships approach, he was a large man with gray hair and scars on his face from battles long past. He had served humanity for 40 years. He had never known defeat like this. "General, we cannot hold much longer," his aide reported. "Our shields are failing. We have lost contact with the outer defense platforms." Daesu nodded slowly. "How many civilians are left?" 12,000. "The evacuation ships need another 2 hours." 2 hours. It might as well have been 2 years. The Vel would break through in 30 minutes. "Then we give them 2 hours," Daesu said. "All units, prepare for close combat. We hold this station until every civilian is gone. No retreat. No surrender." His soldiers did not hesitate. They knew they were going to die. They accepted it because the alternative was letting the Vel murder innocent people. That was something they could not allow. Far away on Earth, Dr. Hannah Kim worked in an underground bunker. The surface was being fortified for the invasion everyone knew was coming, but the real work was happening below. Hannah had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red, and her hands were shaking from too much coffee, but she would not stop. The resonance pulse was a good weapon, she told her team, but it was not enough. "We need something better. Something that will make the Vel regret everything they have done." She stared at the captured Vel technology spread across her workbench. The aliens had been sharing knowledge with humans for 50 years, but they had always held back their best secrets. Now Hannah was discovering those secrets by taking apart Vel machines piece by piece. "Their shields have a weakness," she muttered. "Every technology has a weakness. I just need to find it." In the darkness of an unnamed asteroid field, Captain Una Park was building an army. She had survived the betrayal. Her ship, the Iron Will, had taken heavy damage, but her crew had kept it flying. In the weeks that followed, she had gathered other survivors. Broken ships. Wounded soldiers. People who had lost everything and had nothing left but rage. "We cannot fight them directly," she told her captains during a secret meeting. "They have too many ships. But we can hurt them. We can make them bleed. She pointed at a holographic map showing Vel's supply lines. They think they have already won. They are moving supplies and troops through our territory like they own it, and they are not being careful. That is their mistake. Lieutenant Jun Lee sat in the corner of the meeting room. He had changed in the past 3 months. The young pilot, who had been excited about his first battle, was gone. In his place was something harder, something colder. "When do we start?" he asked. Yuna looked at him. She saw the hatred in his eyes and understood it. The Vel had attacked Nova Prime. Jun Lee's family was dead. "Tonight," she said. "We start tonight." The guerrilla war began. Human ships appeared from nowhere, striking Vel convoys and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. They destroyed supply ships. They killed patrol vessels. They planted bombs on space stations and watched them burn from a safe distance. The Vel were confused at first. They had expected humans to surrender. Instead, humans were fighting like animals trapped in a corner. Warlord Drath, the military commander of the Vel forces, grew angry. He sent more ships to hunt the human raiders. Some of those ships never came back. On the Vel homeworld, High Arbiter Kolos received reports of the growing resistance. He dismissed them with a wave of his hand. "Humans are weak," he said. "They are emotional creatures who cannot accept reality. They will tire eventually. They will break. It is only a matter of time." Ambassador Mira, the diplomat who had spent decades pretending to be humanity's friend, was not so sure. "They are not breaking," she said carefully. "They are getting stronger. Every day they survive, more of them find the will to fight." Kolos laughed. "Let them fight. We have already taken most of their territory. We will attack Earth soon, and then it will be over." Admiral Taiwan was alive. He had escaped the destruction of his flagship and spent weeks hiding in the outer systems. The Vel were hunting him. They knew that killing the human commander would crush what remained of human morale. But Taiwan was not hiding because he was afraid. He was hiding because he was planning. He found a way to broadcast a message to all human survivors. Using old communication networks, the Vel had not thought to shut down. His face appeared on screens across human space, scarred and tired but filled with fire. "My fellow humans," he said, 3 months ago we were betrayed. We lost our fleet. We lost our colonies. We lost people we loved. The Vel believe we are finished. They believe we will surrender." He leaned closer to the camera. "They are wrong. Every ship we lost, every soldier who fell, every world they took from us. We remember, and humanity does not forget. We do not forgive. We will survive this. We will grow strong again. And then we will make them pay for everything they have done." The broadcast spread across the stars. Survivors heard it in refugee camps and hidden bases. Soldiers heard it on battered ships and besieged stations. And something changed. Hope returned. On Ganymede Station, General Daesu held the line for exactly 2 hours and 14 minutes. Every civilian escaped. Most of his soldiers did not survive, but those who did carried his legend with them in her asteroid base. Captain Yuna Park watched the Admiral's message and smiled for the first time in months in his underground bunker. Lieutenant Jun Lee listened to the words and made a silent promise to his dead family. "We will remember. We will repay." And in her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Hannah Kim finally found the weakness she was looking for. She looked at her notes and began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who had just discovered how to hurt the people who had hurt her. "I have you now," she whispered. "I have you." 6 months after the betrayal, the Vel Armada began its final journey toward Earth. Warlord Dreth stood on the bridge of his command ship and watched the stars pass by. Behind him, 500 warships followed in perfect formation. It was the largest fleet the Vel had ever assembled. "How long until we reach the human homeworld?" he asked. 3 days, Warlord." Drath smiled. 3 days until victory. 3 days until humanity was finally crushed. He had grown tired of their resistance. Their little raids and surprise attacks had been annoying, like insects biting at a giant. Now he would step on those insects and end their suffering, but Drath did not know what was waiting for him. In the outer systems, far from Vel's sensors, humanity had been busy. Hidden shipyards worked day and night, building new vessels in secret. Factories on asteroids produced weapons that had never existed before. And in the darkness between stars, a fleet was gathering. Admiral Taiwan stood on the bridge of his new flagship. It was called the Eternal Grudge, and it was unlike anything humanity had ever built. Sleek and deadly. It combined the best of human engineering with stolen Vel technology. It was a ship designed for one purpose: revenge.
Admiral?
All fleet commanders have arrived, an officer reported. Taiwan nodded. Send them in. Captain Unipark entered first. She had spent the past months leading the guerrilla campaign against Vel supply lines. Her raids had killed thousands of enemy soldiers and destroyed hundreds of ships. The Vel called her the Ghost because she struck without warning and vanished without a trace. General Daesu came next. He had survived Ganymede Station and spent months training a new army. They called themselves the Reclamation Corps. Every soldier in the Corps had lost something to the Vel: family, friends, home. They did not fight for victory. They fought for vengeance. Dr. Hannah Kim entered last. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright with excitement. In her hands, she carried a small device that would change everything. Thank you all for coming, Taiwan said. The Vel fleet will reach Earth in 3 days. They expect to find a broken species ready to surrender. We are going to show them how wrong they are. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared, showing Earth and the approaching enemy fleet. We cannot beat them in a direct fight. They have 500 ships. We have 150. But we have something they do not expect. He turned to Dr. Hannah Kim. Doctor, please explain. Hannah stepped forward, holding up her device. This is the Cascade system. It is an evolution of the resonance pulse we used against the Keth. But instead of destroying ships, it disables them. Every Vel ship uses the same basic shield technology. This device sends a signal that overloads those shields and shuts down their power systems. One pulse can disable an entire formation. The room went silent as the commanders understood what this meant. We tested it last week, Hannah continued. It works. 23 Vel patrol ships went dark in less than 10 seconds. Their crews were alive but helpless. Their ships were floating metal boxes. Captain Unipark smiled. It was not a nice smile. So we can level the playing field. At more than that, Admiral Taiwan said. We can win, but we have to be smart. We need to let the Vel commit to their attack before we spring our trap. If they suspect anything, they will retreat, and we will lose our only chance. He looked at each commander in turn. This is not just about defending Earth. This is about sending a message to the entire galaxy. When this battle is over, everyone will know what happens when you betray humanity. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Human forces would pretend to be weaker than they actually were. They would let the Vel fleet get close to Earth. Let them think victory was certain. Then, at the perfect moment, they would activate the Cascade system and strike with everything they had. Lieutenant Jun Lee was now commanding his own squadron. He had proven himself in dozens of battles over the past 6 months. His pilots looked up to him, not because he was the best flyer, but because he was the most determined. He had nothing left to lose, and that made him fearless. Are you ready for this? Captain Unipark asked him before the final briefing. Jun Lee looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. I have been ready since the day they killed my family. I dream about this moment every night. Una nodded. She understood. Many of her crew felt the same way. On the Vel command ship, Warlord Drath received reports from his scouts. Earth's defenses appeared weak. Their fleet was small and scattered. It would be an easy victory. The humans are fools, he told Ambassador Mira, who had come to witness the final battle. They should have surrendered when they had the chance. Now they will all die. Mira watched the human homeworld growing larger on the view screen. Something felt wrong, but she could not explain what. The humans had been fighting hard for 6 months. Why would they suddenly become weak now? Perhaps we should be cautious, she suggested. Humans have surprised us before. Drath laughed. They surprised us once because we were not paying attention. That will not happen again. Begin the attack. The Vel Armada moved into position around Earth, their weapons charged. Their soldiers prepared for ground assault. Victory was moments away. On the bridge of the Eternal Grudge, Admiral Taiwan watched the enemy fleet surround his homeworld. His officers were tense, waiting for his command. The moment had finally arrived. He opened a communication channel to Warlord. Drath. The alien's face appeared on the view screen, confident and cruel. Admiral Taiwan, Drath said with amusement, I am surprised you are still alive. Are you calling to surrender? Taiwan's expression did not change. I am calling to thank you, Warlord. Drath's eyes narrowed. Thank me. For what? You taught us something important. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that trust is foolish. You taught us that the only way to survive in this galaxy is to be harder and more ruthless than our enemies. The Admiral leaned forward. Thank you for that lesson. We will never forget it. He cut the communication channel before Droth could respond. Around him, the bridge crew held their breath. Taiwan gave the order that would change human history. All ships, activate Cascade System, and then show these aliens what humanity is truly capable of. The trap was sprung. The Cascade pulse rippled through space like an invisible wave. It hit the Vel fleet in less than a second. Ships that had been moving with deadly purpose suddenly went dark. Lights flickered and died. Engines stopped. Weapons powered down. Nearly half of Warlord Drath's armada became helpless in the blink of an eye. On the bridge of the Vel command ship, chaos erupted. What is happening? Drath screamed. Why are our ships not responding? Unknown weapon, Warlord. Our shields collapsed without warning. Multiple ships are reporting total power failure. Drath stared at the view screen in disbelief. 200 of his warships were floating dead in space. Their crews were alive but trapped, unable to fight or flee. The remaining ships were breaking formation, confused and afraid. And then the humans attacked. Admiral Taiwan's voice echoed across every human ship. All units, engage. No mercy, no prisoners. Make them pay for everything. The Eternal Grudge surged forward, its weapons blazing. Behind it came 150 ships that had been hiding in the shadow of Earth's moon. They struck the disoriented Vel fleet, like wolves falling upon wounded prey. Captain Yuna Park led the Vanguard. Her ship, the Iron Will, cut through enemy formations with terrifying speed. She had spent months planning for this moment, studying Vel tactics and weaknesses. Now she'll put that knowledge to deadly use. Target their command vessels, she ordered her squadron. Take out their leaders, and the rest will fall apart. Her ships obeyed. One by one, Vel command cruisers exploded under concentrated fire. Without coordination, the alien fleet began to panic. Lieutenant Jun Li flew his fighter into the heart of the battle. His squadron followed close behind, trusting him completely. They had trained together, fought together, and buried friends together. They were more than soldiers now. They were brothers and sisters bound by shared grief. Enemy carrier ahead, his wingman reported. It is launching fighters. Jun Li smiled grimly. Then let us give them something to shoot at. All units, follow me. He pushed his throttle forward and dove straight toward the massive carrier. Enemy fighters swarmed around him, but he did not slow down. His hands moved with perfect precision, dodging and weaving through the chaos. Behind him, his squadron tore apart every enemy that tried to stop them. They reached the carrier's hangar bay and unleashed their missiles. The explosions tore through the ship's interior, destroying fighters before they could launch. Secondary explosions rippled across the hull. The carrier broke apart, its crew dying in fire and vacuum. That is for Nova Prime, Jun Li whispered. On Earth's surface, General Desu watched the sky burn with light from the space battle above. He knew the Vel would attempt a ground invasion. They always did. Conquest required boots on the ground, soldiers to control the population, and he was ready for them. The Reclamation Corps was positioned across every possible landing zone. They wore new armor designed by Dr. Hannah Kim, built to resist Vel weapons. They carried rifles that fired rounds specifically engineered to penetrate Vel biology. Every soldier had memorized the enemy's weaknesses and knew exactly where to shoot. The first Vel dropships broke through the atmosphere over the Pacific region. They expected to find terrified civilians or token resistance. Instead, they found an army waiting with weapons raised. "Welcome to Earth," Daesu said into his radio. "Open fire." The sky filled with anti-aircraft missiles. Dropships exploded before they could land. Those that survived were met by walls of gunfire the moment they touched ground. Vel soldiers poured out of their transports and died within seconds. One alien officer managed to send a message back to the fleet before a human sniper ended his life. "It is a trap. They were ready for us. We need reinforcements." But no reinforcements were coming. In space, the Vel fleet was being destroyed. Warlord Drath watched his armada die around him. Ship after ship exploded or went dark. The humans were everywhere, their attacks coordinated and brutal. They showed no hesitation, no mercy. They fought like creatures possessed. "Retreat." He finally ordered, "All ships retreat." But Captain Unipark had planned for this too. Her guerrilla forces had spent months sabotaging Vel communication relays and supply lines. The fleet's retreat coordinates were scrambled. Ships tried to jump to safety and found themselves flying into ambushes instead. Admiral Nee watched the destruction from his bridge with cold satisfaction. He felt no joy, no triumph, only the grim knowledge that justice was finally being served. "Sir, Warlord Drath's flagship is disabled," an officer reported. "His engines are dead, but life support is still functioning." Taewon nodded. "Tell General Daesu to prepare a boarding party. I want Drath alive." The boarding action was fast and violent. Human soldiers cut through the disabled warship, room by room, corridor by corridor. They found Vel crew members cowering in corners and killed them without hesitation. This was not a rescue mission. This was punishment. General Daesu led the final assault on the bridge himself. His soldiers breached the doors and swarmed inside, weapons blazing. Drath's personal guards fought back desperately, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. When the smoke cleared, only Drath remained alive. He stood in the center of his ruined bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his guards, his armor scorched and his weapon empty. "You cannot win," he snarled at Daesu. "The Confederacy will send more fleets. You will drown in our numbers." Daesu walked toward the alien warlord slowly. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with cold fire. "We are counting on it," he said. "Every fleet you send will end up like this one. Broken, burning, dead." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take him. The Admiral wants to have a conversation with him." As Drath was dragged away in chains, the last Vel ships were dying in Earth's orbit. The battle that was supposed to end humanity had become the greatest human victory in history. On the surface, General Daesu's forces were hunting down the last Vel survivors. In space, Captain Unipark's ships were collecting prisoners and salvage. And on the bridge of the Eternal Grudge, Admiral Taewon was already planning the next phase. Defense was over. Now it was time for offense. He opened a channel to all surviving human forces. "The battle for Earth is won," he announced. "But our war has just begun. The Vel took 8 of our star systems. They killed millions of our people. They tried to enslave our species." His voice hardened. "Now we take everything back. And then we take everything they have. Prepare the fleet. We are going to war." "Cross the fleet," soldiers cheered. In her fighter cockpit, Jun Lee closed his eyes and let himself feel something other than rage for the first time in 6 months. Hope. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The galaxy had changed forever. The Vel Confederacy, which had ruled over 100 star systems for thousands of years, was burning. Human fleets moved through their space like a plague, conquering world after world. Cities that had stood for millennia fell in days. Populations that had never known defeat learned what it meant to lose everything. Admiral Tehuan led the reclamation fleet from the bridge of the Eternal Grudge. His hair had turned completely gray, and new scars marked his face. But his eyes still held the same cold fire that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. The Third Vel defense fleet has been destroyed, an officer reported. Their homeworld is now undefended. Tehuan nodded slowly. 2 years of war. 2 years of blood and fire. It was almost over. Send word to all commands, he ordered. We advance to the Vel capital. Today we end this. Captain Unipark had earned a new title during the war. They called her the Ghost Admiral now, because her fleet appeared without warning, struck without mercy, and vanished before anyone could respond. She had conquered 40 Vel worlds in 18 months. Her name was spoken with fear in every corner of the Confederacy. She stood beside Tehuan as the fleet approached the Vel homeworld. It is strange, she said quietly. I spent so long dreaming about this moment. Now that it is here, I feel nothing. Revenge is like that, Tehuan replied. It consumes you until there is nothing left but the task. When the task is complete, you realize the thing that drove you is gone. He looked at her. But do not worry. We will find new purpose. Humanity always does. The Vel homeworld was a beautiful planet, covered in silver cities and ancient monuments. The Vel had built their civilization here over 10,000 years. They had believed it would last forever. They were wrong. Dr. Hannah Kim watched from a research vessel as human ships entered orbit. She had spent the last 2 years studying captured Vel technology, learning their secrets, understanding their science. Now she would have access to their greatest libraries and laboratories. So much knowledge, she murmured. So much potential. They could have shared this with us. We could have grown together. Her assistant looked at her curiously. Do you regret what we have done? Hannah was quiet for a moment. No, she finally said. They made their choice. They chose betrayal. Now they live with the consequences. But I do regret what could have been. On the surface of the Vel homeworld, the final battle was beginning. Human soldiers landed by the thousands, overwhelming the last defenders. General Desu led the assault on the capital city, his reclamation corps fighting with the same fury that had driven them since the beginning. They faced desperate resistance. Vel soldiers knew they were fighting for their entire civilization. They threw themselves at the human advance with suicidal courage. But courage was not enough. The humans had better weapons, better tactics, and something the Vel had never truly understood. They had raged Captain Junli, as he was now called, led the air assault. His squadron had become legendary during the war, responsible for the destruction of more enemy ships than any other unit. He was no longer the young pilot who had watched his family die. He was something else now. Something harder. He guided his fighter through the smoke and fire above the Vel capital, hunting enemy aircraft with cold efficiency. Every kill brought him closer to the end. Every explosion was another step toward justice. Enemy command center ahead, his wingman reported. Heavy defenses. Junli studied the target. It was a massive building in the heart of the city, surrounded by anti-aircraft weapons and shield generators. Taking it would be dangerous. Many of his pilots would die, but inside that building was High Arbiter Kolos, the leader who had planned the betrayal. The alien who had murdered millions of humans for his own ambition? All squadrons follow me, Junli ordered. Whatever it takes. We are ending this today. The attack was brutal. Human fighters dove through walls of defensive fire, many exploding before they could release their weapons. But enough survived. The shield generators fell. The anti-aircraft batteries went silent, and then the ground forces moved in. General Desu led the final assault himself. His soldiers breached the command center and fought through floor after floor of desperate defenders. When they finally reached the top level, they found High Arbiter Kolos waiting for them. The alien leader looked old and broken. His magnificent robes were torn and stained. His hands trembled as he watched the human soldiers surround him. You have one, he said quietly. Is that not enough? Must you destroy everything we have built? Desu stared at him without sympathy. You taught us this. You showed us that mercy is weakness. Now you will learn what that lesson truly means. He activated his communication device. Admiral, we have him. An hour later, High Arbiter Kolos was brought before Admiral Taiwan in the Vel throne room. The chamber where countless alien rulers had governed their empire for 10,000 years now held a human conqueror. Kolos fell to his knees, chains binding his hands. He looked up at the human admiral with something like fear in his ancient eyes. What do you want? He whispered. Territory. Resources. Our technology? Name your terms. We will give you anything. Admiral Taiwan walked slowly around the kneeling alien. His footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. Terms, he repeated softly. You betrayed us. You murdered millions of our people. You tried to destroy our entire species. And now you ask for terms. He stopped in front of Kolos and crouched down to meet his eyes. There are no terms. This is not a negotiation. We do not want peace. We do not want compromise. We want everything. Your worlds, your technology, your history, your future. Everything the Vel Confederacy has ever built now belongs to humanity. Kolos opened his mouth to speak, but Taiwan raised his hand. You thought we were weak because we showed mercy. You thought we were stupid because we trusted you. You were wrong. We showed mercy because we were strong. We trusted you because we believed in something better. And you destroyed that belief. He stood and turned away. Take him to the detention center. Let him watch as we claim everything his species ever owned. Captain Unipark entered the throne room as Kolos was dragged away. She looked at the ancient symbols on the walls. The treasures displayed in glass cases, the evidence of a civilization that had existed for millennia. What happens now? She asked. Taiwan looked at the stars through a great window. Stars that had once seemed so threatening, now filled with possibility. Now we rebuild. Now we make sure nothing like this ever happens again. The galaxy will learn that humanity is not to be betrayed. Anyone who tries will suffer the same fate as the Vel. He turned to face her. We were never the villains of this story, Yuna. We were the victims who became strong enough to survive. And now we will become strong enough to never be victims again. Outside, human flags rose over the Vel capital. Across the Confederacy, world after world submitted to human authority. Species that had been forced into the Vel Alliance for thousands of years suddenly found themselves with new rulers. Some resisted. They were crushed. Most did not. They had seen what happened to those who opposed humanity. They had no desire to share that fate. In the years that followed, monuments rose on 100 worlds. They honored the fallen and warned the living. Every child in human space learned the story of the betrayal and the reclamation. It became part of their identity, part of their culture, and across the galaxy, a simple truth took root. It spread from species to species, whispered in council chambers and trading posts and military academies. A warning that no one dared to ignore: never betray humanity. They will remember. They will come for you. And they will take everything you have ever built. The Vel had believed they were destroying a lesser species. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. They had taught humanity that the universe was cruel, that survival required strength, that mercy was something only the powerful could afford. And now humanity was the most powerful species in the galaxy. Admiral Taiwan stood alone in the conquered throne room. Looking out at the stars he now commanded, he thought about everyone who had died to bring them to this moment. Friends, family, soldiers, civilians, so many lives lost to Vel treachery. We kept our promise, he said to the empty room. We remembered everything, and we repaid it all. The stars did not answer. They never did, but they belong to humanity now, all of them.